Today we're going to talk about Paper Rex, because Paper Rex have some problems, and we're going to give them a solution. We're not just going to talk about the problems, we're going to talk about a potential solution that I think could help Paper Rex. But before we get to the solution, let's talk about the problems. And if you watch that game against DRX, you'll notice that Paper Rex had a few problems, right? One of the first ones is that the roles are a little bit confused, right? We had Mind Freak playing Sentinel, we had Jing playing Omen on multiple maps. You know, we're trying to lean into the meta, which you might say like, oh, that's good, right? They're trying to play meta stuff. But that is, you know, in doing so, we are then compromising some of the roles that maybe our players are familiar with. And that led to some moments which maybe didn't look so great.
You need to see some individual brilliance to come through from DRX at the moment, because as a team, it's not really doing too much. A reposition from Mako, however, and he'll dispatch of
But it wasn't just role issues for Paper Rex. There are also numerous rounds where the team cohesion just wasn't there, right? And this is a kind of ongoing problem that will probably take, you know, a bit longer to solve. But let's take a look at this round number 11 against DRX, where Paper Rex have got a Breach ult, a Yoru ult, and a Teo ult, and somehow they're going to struggle to take the site.
Isolate a single position with the salvos, look around, taking the fight. That's what he'll try to do with the scaling over towards A at the moment with the rest of the squad, where Forsaken will lead with the Dimensional Drift.
A bit of information as well, but Hyunmin in with the AWP does deny any potential lurks coming out from Mind Freak, and that is going to be Paper X continuing to try and barrel through into this A site. Combo of ultimates heading in.
But can you actually get in towards this at the moment? You're ready for a drop out toward the heavens, and it looks like it might just be the holding of the side at the moment. Bane Flashback getting active.
And they found him. That's a couple more down into A short, and that's DRX.
Now, another problem that we witnessed for Paper Rex as well was on Icebox. Whilst they did win that map, they played an extremely attack-sided combo. Okay, we're playing no Sentinel, triple Initiator with a Duelist as well. And as I said, they did end up winning the map, but they won it in a very strange way by getting dominated on their defense side, but then dominating on their attack side, which you might say like, oh, hey, that's part of the plan. That's just how the comp is going to work. But once people start to figure out your attack side and understand what you're trying to do, that might be a bit harder to do. And in that game, DRX really abused the gaps that their comp leaves on the defense side.
Going to be lurking up towards Kitchen or somewhere in that round, and he found what he needed to.
And that's what you gotta love. Now, although Forsaken with a Waylay instantly dashes onto the top of Tube, doesn't see anything though. And that's where his refrag gets called out. Mind Freak comes back in just to help out his fallen teammate. At the same time though, DRX still working.
So we know the Paper Rex have quite a few problems, but what is the solution? Well, my solution is going to be quite simple, but I do think it would hit on a number of Paper Rex's issues and potentially help them out. So what is the solution? Well, it's playing one agent, and that agent is Deadlock. So why Deadlock? Why should Paper Rex be playing this agent? First, let's talk about Deadlock herself, right? Obviously, Deadlock recently received a pretty significant buff with the Gravnet cooldown only being 40 seconds now. I think that Deadlock is a very, very strong agent that I'm honestly kind of shocked more people haven't lent into, especially because Deadlock combos quite well with other good agents in the game like Teo and Raze. And so it seems like Deadlock to me is a decent option on quite a few of the maps in the map pool right now. But when we talk about Paper Rex specifically, Deadlock does, I think, fit their playstyle, right? Their kind of combo, chaotic, you know, let's go kind of playstyle. Deadlock would work pretty well with that, right? Like you throw a Gravnet as you're going in, you get that initial combo, you get that first kill, you then have a much more solid post plant. We've seen Paper Rex struggle with their post plants in the past, right? Getting to the site generally hasn't been their problem, but post plants sometimes can be. Well, Deadlock, of course, is a massive help with just securing that post plant, especially with a refreshable Gravnet that you can potentially get one for that post plant as well. That's the kind of thing that Paper Rex need if we talk about their kind of long-term historic struggles. But it might also help with the roles, because a lot of people are going to scrutinize the Jing on Omen, and if you do go through that game and look at Jing's Omen, there are multiple times where you do see like, oh, he kind of isn't in the right position here, or oh, he's missed this or missed that, right? This paranoia is a bit late, you know, it's not quite in the right position, all those kind of things. If you do go through that game, there are, you know, pretty obvious and I think understandable mistakes, because Jing just hasn't played a lot of Omen. Right, of course he's not going to be looking like Mako, right, who's played Omen for years and years. Yeah, of course that's not going to be the case. But an agent he has played quite a bit of is Sage, right? So if you move him onto Deadlock on certain maps where, you know, maybe Raze isn't that viable, Deadlock seems like a decent option for Paper Rex, and I assume that Jing probably could get the hang of it pretty quickly, right? Yeah, you might need to learn a couple Gravnet lineups, but once you've got those Gravnet lineups down, really at that point, like, you're pretty golden, to be honest, right? The rest of the agent is pretty simple, and you could probably figure it out pretty quick and get a decent value from Jing on Deadlock. And of course, on some of the maps like Split or Lotus, where Raze is particularly good, you could put Jing back on Raze and potentially have Forsaken or Devi play the Deadlock instead, right? Because Deadlock has an incredible synergy with Raze, right? And so you would get that incredible synergy. And again, you think of Paper X, you think of, like, even on the defense side, right? Early attacking gambits, getting aggressive early on. Well, Deadlock Raze is going to be a great solution and potential way of doing that and still giving you some solidity on the rest of the map. And we did talk about Paper X potentially struggling on some of these defense sides. Well, guess what? Deadlock is going to help you with that, right? Deadlock is going to give you some solidity. Sure, it's not maybe going to give you the full info that you might need, right? Like we saw DRX abusing them on some of those timings and flanks and whatnot, and Paper X not being quite ready for it. It might not help you in all of those circumstances, but in terms of, like, defensive capability of your comp, you know, you are going to be helped out at least somewhat by having a Deadlock, right? And at least if you put a wall down in a certain position, you know, like, oh, well, they're not going to go through that for the next however many seconds, right? Until it's gone. So adding a Deadlock into some of their comps as well might also help alleviate some of their defensive struggles. And so then I decided I would show you what this might look like in terms of Paper X and their comps going through the current map pool. So what I've done, and you might not agree with all these comps, but let's just run through them quickly, right? So this would be an Ascent comp. Now Ascent was the map that they banned. It's not been historically a great map for Paper X, but this is a comp that, like, could work, right? Like, you could see this. We've seen Deadlock on Ascent before, right? So, I mean, they might stick with their ban on Ascent, but that might work. On Fracture, I think it works, you know, fairly decently that they could play something like this. You could even, you know, swap it around so that Forsaken is playing Cypher, or, you know, Fracture shouldn't really be a problem for them with Jing playing Raze. You would think that something like this might work. On Haven is a map that I would say maybe the Deadlock isn't the greatest choice. So this is the comp that they did run on Haven. They did lose on Haven. I would maybe suggest that Haven also is a map they haven't historically been great at, and maybe they should ban that instead and try and play Ascent. On Icebox, I mean, you could stick with their comp. Again, they could swap Jing here for a Sage or for a Deadlock. I think it would be fine. You could also, you know, just put Devi on Killjoy if you wanted to. I mean, they did win on this map, so, you know, they might stick with it if they did want to do that. On Lotus, this is the comp that C9 run, right? So, I mean, it's a comp that is at least playable according to another team. And so I think you could just run this with Jing on Raze, Forsaken on Deadlock, and everything looks okay there, right? Roll-wise, nothing looks too crazy. And then on Pearl as well, something like this I think could work pretty well for them, right? We've seen quite a lot of Double Sentinel have success on Pearl, and this is the kind of comp that, like, again, everyone is probably on an agent that they feel like they can play to a decent level, and this could potentially work for them. And then finally Split, again, something like this just looks like it would work, right? You've got a ton of synergy, ton of potential combos here with the Raze, with the Tail, with the Breach, right? Everyone is on a role that they look comfortable on. I think that this would make sense. And so for me right now, I mean, Deadlock is probably the most underused agent in terms of the potential value you can find from this agent right now across all of VCT. And I think that Paper X are kind of the prime team, both in terms of playstyle, in terms of fixing some of their role problems, in terms of fixing some of their synergy problems. It seems like they, to me, should be leaning heavy into this agent because I think it suits them very well and is also very strong and fits in the current meta.